Meeting to order for the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners at the Harwich Water Department, 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. On Thursday, August 25th, 2022 at 11:30. We need a motion for the consent agenda for the minutes from June 16th.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abatements. And I'm sure people are here to speak on abatements. Anybody here for abatements? No? Okay. If there are, I'll give you the opportunity to speak. 23 Cody Lane. So, 23 Cody Lane. There was a toilet issue with a float. So there's an abatement request for, it says the abatement request is $68 from $587.69. So they're gonna pay the bill except for the $68. Or they want everything reduced and only pay $68.
That would be my...
That's how I understood in the write-up, but then I'm looking at this and that doesn't match. Anybody here from Cody Lane? Okay.
That would be my thought, looking at their account history.
All right.
The bills have been right around that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Thompson,
I move we deny.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next abatement is 21 Pilgrim Road. So, this looks like this was irrigation. Pilgrim Road? Is there anything else you have part of it, is there anything else you wanted to add to this?
I think I explained.
Yeah, okay. Noreen?
I did look this morning at the water regulations, and I see that this gentleman has asked not for a total abatement, but to pay at a lower tier. And I thought that in the water regulations it said that you could consider that, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find that section, so I don't know if anybody remembers that section clearer than I do.
I know we had talked about it at one point, establishing kind of like a disaster rate, but I don't know that it was adopted.
We never made a formal decision. It was a discussion that we've had to leave that opportunity on the table, about a case-by-case situation. I mean, you're not denying you use the water, but you're just asking for a lower tier, which I really don't have a problem with that.
Right.
So I mean, it's not, so.
So moved.
All right, so the abatement will be to go from a tier 4 to a tier 1 for the $195.
It would go to one.
Yes, the bill will be $195. So that's the motion. Mr. Thompson, that was a second? I thought you made a second.
Yeah.
I'm not pressuring you. What's on your mind?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think we could do better than that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna write it off like that, 195. We can make some adjustment,
Okay.
or we split it, or whatever, but I can't. It costs us, the water's going away, you know what? That's the hazards of having irrigation.
All right, so half of the A72 is $436.
So that would be it, that's what I would want, 436.
Any discussion on the 436?
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Noreen. All right, so the motion.
Who wants to say?
Absolutely, sir.
I just have a question, that's fine. I'm just, with water, one of our things out, the first 8,000 of the last 40,000. It's the same water, the same waste, right? So, my question, I just try to be creative on this.
Right.
Just, If this had come out earlier, for 8,000, it would be at the 135 rate. So I don't see.
So,
why it would be a-
so you're saying if it didn't hit the 8,000 mark, it would have been at a lower rate?
Or anything up to 8,000.
Right, right, that's absolutely right, yeah.
This just happened to end up being
Right.
large, and it goes to 635. So I'll stick with 1.
601, right.
So my question, I think, is just, seeing that there was the problem with it and everything, what would be the problem with saying that it was at a tier 1 rather than a tier 4, if it's the same water?
Well, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but irrigations are always a problem here. I mean, we have, most of our abatements are irrigation. Whether it's a broken head or break underground, and it comes like, the bottom line is that it's a waste of water. So we need to recoup recoup the loss of that water. So obviously, the more you use, the bigger the waste it is. So our feeling is we're just trying to be, the bill comes out to, $912, whatever it is, and that's what the bill is. The tier 1, yeah, I mean, we've done different tiers, tier 2, tier 3, trying to be fair about the whole thing too, but the bottom line is the water's been used and it's gone through our system. So trying to be fair about it, to give, you a break and to get some kind of repayment for that water loss. So, I mean, we could just say, we'll keep it at the 601 and just pay the 912. So we're just trying to be fair with,
No, I understand.
come up with a number, this is what we're trying to do. Right.
Mr. Chairman, I tell you, historically, normally, we deny these. Irrigation's not our problem, and we don't support it. So even at 50%, you got a deal. It's either that or 900.
No, I said,
I'm
it
sorry.
should be anything, it's fine.
I
but
mean,
I'm just-
our
I'm
overhead
just kind of wondering.
is always climbing everything. So to pump water, to let it run off, it can't happen. So we could have this all over town. Where would we be?
This was also, I think it was a result of an outage, right? No, I explained that.
I understand. Believe me, I understand. I've heard it 1,000 times. But the truth of the matter is, just, everybody has to oversee their own thing, whether it's your toilet or your irrigation.
Hang on a second,
Yeah,
Dan,
Clyde.
on the application, it says 9/12/23. On the gentleman's write-up, it says 872.
Portion of that could be the base
I
rate,
just did the 144,000.
so that doesn't include the base rate.
All right, so, hold on. So it's 9/12. So it's 456 is what the abatement would be. So 456. So the motion's been amended from the 195 to 456. Is there a second?
Second. Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So we met you halfway, did 4456.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next one is 7 Lois Way. So it looks like they came to the home and there was no water at the property, and they called in and was asked over the phone if the valve was turned on. They were told yes. We had a tech go out and the valve was actually turned off. So the homeowner just made a mistake is what it comes down to, on a Saturday. Okay. Is anybody here from 7 Lois? Okay. It's $150 for them to go out on a Saturday just to turn the valve on. I think it was just a simple mistake. I mean, it didn't really.
I meant to deny.
Yeah, but still have to send somebody out.
Well, just give me my opinion. That's all. Noreen.
It's probably different every time, but when the person calls in, are they told that there might be a charge if circumstances dictate that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's generally, when we get these sorts of calls,
Right.
it's not uncommon, especially with the seasonal community, that, plumbers, there may be a valve on the homeowner's side left off.
Right.
It's not uncommon that we find ourselves in a situation where we're
Right.
going out and it's a homeowner's valve that's closed, our, lines all open up.
Yeah.
And we just, for information, I mean, we are paying time and a half, 4-hour callback for the technical help.
So the reg says, due to flushing repair work ongoing in Harwich? Where does that come in?
My understanding is that the property owner believed that the water, not having water was due to our flushing,
Oh, okay,
but,
all right.
Can I ask you a question?
Judy?
So the customer side valve, the customer, at least over the phone, know where that was, kind of thing?
I mean, I know the tech,
So they talk to a tech,
yeah, the
not
tech,
just...
they call our office, it gets put through to the on-call operator. The operator, tech has a conversation with the property owner, hey, are the valves open? The property owner said no, or said they were open, sorry. So the tech went out to investigate.
Well, I just know in the past, when a similar instance like this has happened, we have abated the $150 because it was a mistake. So I'm just putting that out there as an option. So is there a motion?
Well, seeing as we're splitting things today, how about a motion for half?
Well, didn't Alan motion and?
Oh, you did, yes.
There's a motion there's a motion to deny, and John has a second. I just had a discussion. So that's the motion right now. So the motion is to deny. We have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna say no. So 4-1. All right. Water restrictions.
Well, I guess I'll start. I did send to the board last night, I got an email from the Drought Task Force. They did increase our drought declaration from level 2 to level 3. So conditions are not improving. We didn't know that already. As far as restrictions and how everything's been handled so far, we've been pretty inundated with anonymous reporting and trying to process, verify, mail out those notification letters, and coordinate, all that internal effort. There is some instances where, upon issuance of the first written notice, some property owners are reaching out to us because they're not using irrigation, some of it's neighbor-on-neighbor stuff. So just I guess my first ask on water restrictions is if the board would consider giving us at the administrative level to internally adjust or abate some of these fines. If we issue a fine, the property owner calls, we go investigate, determine that, they are being truthful, the irrigation was off, instead of having those all have to come through as abatements to the board. So we could try to handle some of that internally.
I have no issue with you handling those on a case-by-case basis. I don't think the rest of the board feels that way.
Mr. Chairman, let me make a motion, let the department handle those abatements
On a case-by-case.
as necessary, case by case.
That's the motion. There's a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And just also included in the packet, there were some stats just on kind of some of the notifications we've sent out to date. And one kind of interesting tidbit is that we have at least known right now 262 irrigation wells, which is more than I think we were anticipating originally. And that's causing a little bit of frustration, I think on the public side, because people are making reports of violations and they're seeing people continue to water day after day after day, thinking that, we're not taking action or responding to those violations. And I guess for the public following along, we are taking in everyone, verifying it against the private well database, and then where applicable, mailing out letters and assessing fines. But we do have to go through that process, and there's, a duration of time that has to go by before we can take all these in, process and mail them. So if people are reporting day after day after day, they should understand that it's not because we're not responding, it may be also because the property owner's just doesn't care and willing to pay the fine.
So when someone does call in, and they, it's like, I don't know, whatever Main Street, 0 Main Street, before the homeowner gets a letter saying that you're gonna get a fine for next time, do we have a way of finding out if they have a well, that they're not on town water?
Yeah, so we have a database that was provided by the Health Department for irrigation wells, so everything that comes in gets verified, checked. I don't know, Wellesley, I don't want to call you to the to the table, but
It's not
the
perfect
process.
yet, but we have been working with the health department to collate data so that when we do find out a property has well, we have a field in our software where we update that. So if we do get a violation notice, that's checked against what we have. Now, there are wells in town where it's not in the town database because it may have been installed before they were actually keeping a record.
All right.
So it's not perfect, but as we get the information in, we're updating ours, so going forward, we'll know who has one. And that's really the reason for the first notice. So if someone does have a well, and it's not in our database or the health department, and they say, hey, I've got a well, that's the opportunity for them to let us know so that we don't start finding them.
Okay.
So that's what we have so far.
Judy?
So this morning, and I thought I would have it there, Secretary Card for Energy and Environmental Affairs came out with a notice, like a statewide notice about water use. So I'm wondering, at a certain point, even if you're on well water versus town water, are you, you have...
Well, Dan sent those you sent all of us the email.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna read the level
Okay.
3 after we're all done, so
Yeah.
everyone knows what it is.
Because I'm just thinking that at some point, I think this is going to be a non-issue, that
I would assume
nobody's
so, too,
supposed
because that's it,
to...
it's a state regulation
Yeah.
that they're putting out there. Noreen?
Can you give me a little more description on what these are? Like, so 262, an irrigation well known, so that's in our records for some reason that it's a well and it's used for irrigation.
Well, I tell you what, just look at 62 Hoy Road on the list.
Yeah,
That's mine.
okay. I believe
The
you.
day we created to shut down the irrigation, I went home and shut the well off.
Okay,
Yeah. I'm not going to speak with forked tongue, keep water on my lawn, and I'm telling everybody else to shut down.
right,
No way.
yeah.
And when I see others that I know of, I share them.
Yeah.
You know, come on, it's all the same aquifer,
Yeah,
you know.
I agree.
If your house catches fire, you're being pissed because there's not enough pressure to put the fire out.
That's right.
So,
I mean, I did get a
Right.
phone call today about well water. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm just trying to understand what these categories are. So the second one, irrigation accounts on town water. So take, for example, so that's not a well, that's just an irrigation account. So that's like me. I told you guys I was getting irrigation, and I got irrigation, and I shut it off. So then, irrigation account source unknown, what is that?
So that is, we know there's an irrigation system on the property, but we cannot we haven't been able to verify if it's solely on ours or if it's a well.
Okay.
Until it's verified, we
Right.
keep it as generic.
So the actual irrigation accounts that we estimate is like 3,500, these three numbers combined. The 1,900, the 1,300.
So in other words, if it has not been verified, we assume it's on town water.
Right.
For now, until we get verification.
Right,
It is.
I'm just trying to find out how many irrigation accounts we have. So it's 3,500? No? What am I reading now?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, Wellesley, did you put this
No, I didn't.
together? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I just don't know if it's a cumulative total or not.
And then my last question would be, what triggers a first notice for an irrigation well?
Meaning,
Well,
Oh,
meaning
so-
that since we don't
Yeah.
control wells.
Right, we've been sending out kind of courtesy requests.
Okay.
So, we acknowledge that you have a private well
I
and you're
see.
not under
Okay.
jurisdiction, however, all straw's in the same glass.
Gotcha. All right.
What is considered, how is it fined after the warning?
Yeah.
And who verifies the warning?
Meaning,
Is it the town or the employees of the water department check it?
the checks
Or are they
after.
going on the customers, if somebody
So we're
calls
getting
in
them
a
from,
complaint?
yeah, we're getting them from multiple sources. So we're getting written reports through the website, we're getting people call, we're also, our staff, we're not driving out with
Yeah.
the specific intent to police at this
Right.
point, but as they drive around are making notes. So we're getting multiple, reports on properties. Once we've issued the first written notice, that's really, if you don't have irrigation, that should prompt you to, call us and let us
Right.
know that you're not irrigating. Beyond that, we're moving to fines.
I just can't, unless it's verified by an employee, a town employee, I don't know, I can't see it, I can say, somebody's calling in or
So-
had a vendetta. Or whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's
You know what I mean?
so in those situations, if someone is calling, I had one the other day, we had a report that, they were irrigating.
Right.
Property owner called, said, I'm not irrigating. I drove out and witnessed hoses all across the lawn and some browning, so, that was, like I
Right.
was requesting in the beginning of this discussion, why I was looking for that ability to internally adjust those, because after driving out and looking at it, it definitely appeared that they were operating within the restrictions. We did do a preliminary meter read at the start of implementing the water ban, so that should people contest or dispute whether or not they've been irrigating, we can take a subsequent meter read and look at the consumption over that time period. It's very apparent who's using water for domestic purposes and who isn't, just by looking at the gallonage. We also do have e-coder meters, which allow us to get a 90-day history, a daily history of consumption. We're talking internally before the meeting about, next year, or if we are to start policing and getting, on that side of enforcement, that maybe we start prioritizing irrigation accounts that we know that don't currently have the capability to get the 90-day history, start switching those meters and upgrading them so that, for monitoring, tracking, enforcement, if we need it, that 90-day history is daily as opposed to, an aggregate.
All right.
So, again, just back to this, I was just kind of surprised that if that is cumulative, that, so 1/3 of our homes have irrigation.
Yeah, is that cumulative?
Yes, so we have, a few years ago, we did a mailing to all of the potential irrigation customers, and all of those responses we got back, we know that there's 1,379 irrigation accounts on town water. Prior to that mailing, we had been compiling data from property transfer forms that asks, is there an irrigation system there? But it doesn't ask if it's on town water or a well. So we can't confirm, but it's believed that additional 1,901 are also on town water.
Yeah.
But we can't confirm it.
No, it's just, it gives a good feel for
It
it.
sure does.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
never, I wouldn't have thought that 1/3 of our homes
Right.
were on
Yeah.
irrigation,
Yeah.
so that's good to know when we evaluate what restrictions we will be, the most bang for the buck, water-wise. Thank you.
Dan.
Trying to think if I missed anything.
All right, well, you stop and think for a second, so I'm just gonna read this. This is
Oh, thank you.
this is the state's recommendations for the communities and individuals living and working within a level 3 critical drought, which is where we're at. Residents and businesses, stop all non-essential outdoor watering, minimize overall water use. Immediate steps for communities, adopt and implement the state's non-essential outdoor water use restrictions for drought. Level 3 restrictions calls for a ban on all non-essential outdoor water use. Provide timely information on drought and on water conservation tips to local residents and businesses. Enforce water use restrictions with increasingly stringent penalties. Strongly discourage or prohibit installation of new sod, seeding, and/or landscaping, washing of hard surfaces such as sidewalks, patios, driveways, siding, personal vehicle or boat washing, filling of swimming pools. Establish or enhance water use reduction targets for all water users and identify top water users and conduct targeted outreach to help curb their use. So that's the state's recommendations, and it is only a recommendation right now. Jimmy, Doreen?
So, you know, and if I make a mistake, please correct me, but I don't know how Brewster stands. I think Dennis is still, unless they've changed it in the last day or two, like 2 days. It still bothers me that there are people on our water source that don't have the stringent restrictions that we have, which, you know, and there's really nothing we can do about that, right? They get the same notice, they take their action.
Yeah, and the emails have already been going around internally between Brewster, Orleans, Chatham, Dennis. We have a kind of a group email in there with this declaration, kind of figuring out what their recommendations to their boards are going to be. I think Brewster was mentioning hand watering only, given the declaration. This is all very likely to change over the next year or so when they start issuing Water Management Act permits to Cape water suppliers. Right now, we're all still operating under the permits that expired in 2010, and they've been continuing under the I think it's Permit Extension Act that they enacted so that we could continue operating within the confines of our old permit. Our old permits, none of our old permits had any real conditions on them for responding to drought declarations. It left it up to us pretty much on the Cape to manage. That tune is changing significantly at DEP. Orleans does have their Water Management Act permit. They're the only ones on Cape that I'm aware of. They were permitted from the beginning of the season to be 2 days a week, and I believe now they're full ban.
Yeah.
And that, I expect, is going to be similar for all of us once they issue the permit. So we're just still in this kind of weird in-between period that we've been in for the last 12 years.
On a similar note, within our town, you know, I see a lot of brown lawns and I see a lot of people shut off. But I also hear people talk about a lot of green lawns. I mean, maybe they're not in my neighborhood, you know, I don't know. But it doesn't seem like we can do anything further to shut people. I mean, nobody's gonna ride around at 4 in the morning and try to see if
Right, and that, you know, we were talking about policing, and,
Right.
you know, one of the concerns right now is we're so inundated
right.
with just the reporting we're getting in. I think there was 172 emails, you know, from, is it Monday
Over the
this morning?
weekend.
Over the weekend.
Just over the
Wow.
weekend.
You know, so we have to process 172, check it against the well, develop the letter, you know, note the accounts, mail them all out.
Well, actually, you kind of just answered my question. I was afraid that, you know, a ton of reporting happened, you know, August 3rd, and then it kind of dwindled off. But if it's continuing, then we're doing
Yeah.
what this department can, as far as I'm concerned.
My question is, are they being fined on a day-to-day basis? From when they were reported, to when the notice was sent out, to when the second? So they're reported, and they get a letter saying, please stop, basically, right? Please stop. Now, who has to report them a second time for the fine to start?
Once we mail out that letter, there's a, I guess, grace period, if you want to call, so we can let the post get to the
Right, give the
property owner.
opportunity to do
But
the
from
right
there
thing.
on out, every subsequent report of irrigation
So they'll be reported
use-
again?
Yeah, and people are getting reported almost daily, and
Okay.
each report is another fine. I mean, because every day they irrigate is another violation.
And it is
of
on a
water
day-to-day
restrictions.
basis?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing, I mean, I've been out, obviously in public, and the thing that just bothers me the most is, I get it if you don't know. If you don't know at this point, you're not paying attention. But when I hear people say, I haven't gotten caught yet, and I'm gonna keep doing it until I do get caught, just I just can't even comprehend that. So I'm just asking people to do the right thing. Even if you're on a private well, we have no authority over that, but please, use some common sense, hold off, and let's just try and get through this at this point. That's where we're at.
And a big discussion too amongst, the neighboring water suppliers is, how are you gonna enforce it? What are you doing to enforce it? Because I think we're all in kind of uncharted territory where we're actually in a position we have to implement a mandatory ban and enforce it. And, we're kind of working through those growing pains. And I think in anticipation of next season, assuming things don't change for the better, we have an opportunity. We're almost at the end of the irrigation season, but to develop, a better plan to implement in the spring if we find ourselves here again.
And there are states in different parts of the country that had to develop this 10, 15 years ago, so there are examples, and, countries too, like Israel, it's not only the neighborhood watchdogs, but they actually have, like, water police, so, yeah.
Yeah, all right, so we'll keep this on the table for an ongoing conversation. All right, water, wastewater department, future staffing, equipment, and miscellaneous needs. Any new information on that?
Well, so, just before I wanted to just follow up from our discussion with the town administrator and Selectman McCaskill, before we go there, one thing that I did forget, and I think we should keep this on as an ongoing discussion item, one of the items that I did leave out in the last discussion, as Steve had requested to include the addition of a vehicle or two to our fleet. Right now, we got guys driving around together. I'm going to get a better matrix table together
For the water department?
for the water department. Right now, the big, what we call the super truck.
The dump truck?
No, the F-550, the service truck.
Okay, yeah.
That doesn't go home on call, that stays here. Right now, the guys are shifting trucks or riding in trucks together, which it can become difficult to try to schedule work if we don't have enough trucks to send guys to different places. So,
How are we down trucks? We haven't changed?
not down a truck, more when Jay kind of moved out of the digging crew and more of, the foreman role.
Service?
What's that?
What, service or oversight?
More oversight as opposed to, in the trench. He used to drive to the digging crew in truck one every day. Now he's out, in the street, not in that truck, so that kind of expanded. DPW does have, I believe, 2 recently retired Ford Explorers from the police department that I believe they have available. I know Steve's working on that, but I can bring this back with all the information, but I just wanted to make a note that I forgot to bring that up last time. I guess, do you want to give an update on our conversation, or?
All right, so Dan and I and the town administrator and Chair McCaskill, the select board, we met a couple weeks ago to basically go over staffing. We had a couple of ideas as far as Dan being obviously the wastewater superintendent, having a assistant water superintendent, and then having an assistant wastewater superintendent. That way it gives Dan more time to focus on, basically the creation of the wastewater system. It was well received, but at this point we just need to put together salaries, benefit packages, what it's going to cost,
Job
descriptions. So I felt as though it was a positive conversation, but still preliminary, basically figure out what the job description is going to be. What else we talked about?
Also about existing HEA staff acknowledgement, of their involvement in additional workload and duties due to taking on wastewater.
Right.
There was acknowledgement of that, by all in the meeting. I think they're currently in negotiations with the town at this point.
Right.
The union, so it was too far into negotiations to introduce new topics. So I
Right.
think the intent is, let's get through negotiations and then, you know, start working on, you know, a side letter that can accomplish recognizing them for that.
What else, is there anything else?
I think that was,
No,
I know you have concerns too about when the need will be greatest for you. So what's the overall timeline we might be looking at?
yeah, so, and I've been trying to do a lot of thinking about, you know, the staffing on the wastewater side and what, you know, an appropriate transition would be, and the best way to go about it. Now, I think, do I have 40 hours to delegate to someone today? I don't know that I do, right? So I think that's acknowledging that, and when will that take place? So
we're talking about the wastewater side of it.
wastewater side of things. So, absent an assistant sewer superintendent, which may be premature at this point, you know, at some point there's going to be a time where the town needs to evaluate, okay, does it make sense to us to have an internal department to do wastewater operations, or are we going to continue subcontracting wastewater operations? I think the timing of that is contingent upon customer base, pump stations, the cost of that contract, and how, you know, the evaluation of whether or not we can do it cheaper in-house. I think as the system continues to grow beyond East Harwich and to West Harwich, that may be the time that an assistant sewer superintendent becomes a viable position. But in the interim, there's certainly still some help that I could use on this side of things. And one of the thoughts I had was, you know, potentially, you know, we have a new hire, you know, at some point coming on, we have a vacant position on the water side. It may be that we could create a hybrid water/wastewater, you know, position that could be like a wastewater foreman that splits their time helping me develop the O&M components for the sewer system, as well as help fill in on the water side for meter change-outs, distribution activities, things like that. So I think that may be a more appropriate transition before an assistant sewer superintendent that, you know, now I have enough to delegate, I guess, if it's a split position.
So that'd be a unique position, 'cause what I don't want to see happen is employees going back and forth from water to wastewater.
Right.
I want to keep them as separate as possible. But the person that would be brought on would evolve into into a wastewater employee.
I think it
But
would,
that
yeah.
person that is brought on would have to have that level of knowledge to move up
Right.
to that position, because we're not creating another position on top of that. That position would have to be created with knowing that you're moving up to that next level.
Right.
So that employee coming in would have to have that knowledge of wastewater.
Right.
Noreen?
I like that idea as a transitional idea. My concerns would be, I would hate to see if you're talking half and half. I mean, your salary is split now, so that's all right, but I'd hate to see you lose the capacity on the water side for that full-time position. So that would be something we'd have to think about before we kind of gave it up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The other thing that I want to keep thinking about is, certainly, as you say, when we get beyond phase 3, no question. But getting a little ahead of our skis here, but let's say next May, phase 3 was approved. Is it part of Weston and Sampson's duties to answer the hundreds of questions that come in from all the potential new? No. So that would be all you. So
Yeah.
see, I think it's needed earlier than you say, because,
And that, to go a little more into the transition component,
right,
so I was thinking, I guess, longer term, that position could be a hybrid, eventually become a full-time wastewater and then a full-time water. You know, so it would go slowly from our current full-time water department staff. We'd lose a half of full-time employee to wastewater, you know, you say FY '24, as that grows, wastewater duties grow, then we slide that person full wastewater, have a full, so that we restore
Right.
to original water department staffing, and then have a full-time employee on the wastewater side, but it's
Yeah.
kind of distributed.
You know, I think we should always keep the original water operator job on the books as is.
Right.
You know, because that way you can, because really, we're talking about creating a new employee or requesting to create a new employee over the next couple of years, but you're doing it like within the expense, even though they're separate departments of the existing job now, but then eventually they'll both be full-time
Right.
jobs, so leave it on the books.
Sure.
Would it also be possible to consider bringing somebody in part-time on a consultancy for a period of time? And that consultancy is paid out of the wastewater money. So you're, from the get-go, you're keeping that separation, and then you can flick that switch on a full-time position, and maybe that person, applies for, I'm just thinking, number one, it may be easier to find somebody. So number one, you don't lose that full-time on the water side. Number two, it may be easier to find somebody, in my age that would be interested, it's transitioning to retirement, would be interested in doing 6-month, 12-month half-time position. Just an idea, just to throw that out there.
I guess the only tough thing on my side with that is the amount of, just thinking public interaction history they got to come up on board with. It'd almost take them 6 months just to even wrap their head around where we've been and where we're heading. I guess would be,
That makes sense.
and then investing that time only to potentially, but I'm explore either way. I think any help is.
And you don't think you could fill 40 hours a week for that person now?
I don't know that I would be
I'm thinking you
comfortable
probably
giving
could.
up some of it. I think, like, a lot of the wastewater stuff can be public interaction, meeting with, associations, homeowners, walking them through the history, where we're at exactly, why we don't have, the exact limits of the sewer system yet. There's some discussions that I don't necessarily know I would want to delegate, just, because they have a good rapport with,
Yeah.
and way to explain it. Not that I can't help someone do that too, but I'm seeing the sewer position in my support as filling a gap that, as far as the operation and maintenance side, to allow me to stay primarily focused on implementing the CWMP. So, coordinating subcontractors to vacuum out the wet wells, or coordinate and oversee the jetting of the collection system. I can't be out there, doing that stuff. We don't have to do it yet because the system's brand new, but in a year, they recommend you jet your collection system, at least, half of it every other year. So we're gonna be getting into that, as customers pick up.
Yeah.
And I just can't divide myself any further to take,
I know that.
yeah.
And is there a capacity number where other towns have hired a full-timer in these kind of situations?
I'm not sure. I
To do
don't
the-
know how much information is out there,
Yeah,
because I think a lot of the sewer development took place in the 60s when the first kind of round of federal money came out, and now anyone that has a sewer system either put it in back then. I think there's a couple that are like us in its infancy, but I think it's going to be harder to find that evolution of a department starting from scratch to compare ourselves to.
I would, Alan,
Generally speaking, as it's gone here on the Cape, it seems like either the towns have, like Chatham, created their own sewer department, separate of water. And, Chatham never really had it was kind of I don't know, it wasn't anything like Harwich's water, but it was run by, they did have a super. You take Barnstable and some of those other towns, it comes under the Department of Public Works, not even anything to do with water. So it's a whole separate, so Department of Public Works has far more staff, you know, and they probably come and go or whatever. And they, you know, hire the people from management. In our case, as I see this going, I mean, already it's the water staff is carrying the load for all the wastewater. I mean, whether it's a billing or correspondence or whatever, all of you are currently carrying that. So at some point, you need to address the staffing as management, repairs, or troubleshooting, and office staff, somebody on the phone. Because once those 400, 500 potential customers are hooked up, the rules all change. And that's not far away, in the next 2 years. So I think you need to stay the course, find the staff you need, get it funded in this next year's town meeting, and move ahead, so you're ready to go.
I mean, I would agree. My concern is you taking the time to bring someone up to speed as a per diem with the possibility of going full-time. I'd rather just the position exist, the person be hired for that position, and we just move forward, because you don't have a lot of time in your hands, and to put that energy into someone who's may not be here is just, I think it's a step backwards at this point. Noreen?
Well, actually, you just kind of said what I was going to say. Years ago, we talked about, you know, naturally keep everything on the table, but we talked about, in a dream world, having a consultant come on part-time, and then that would, you know, mesh into the most wonderful assistant, you know, sewer person, and everything would be wonderful, and those things really happen. So I think whatever time is left, the most important thing is they mesh with you getting done what they want to. So, and I mean, I think for a consultant, you need somebody to come on that's, you know, ready to go, that knows the town's sentiments, knows at least 5 or 6 years of the discussions, and unfortunately, that person will probably not want the full-time job, you know, so. But I mean, I thought it was a great idea for about 10 years, but now we're getting.
Could I ask one more question
Yes.
for clarification? So can you just explain the timeline? So is this a job that would have to go, you know, in our budget, whatever, before next town meeting in the spring?
That was another thing we talked about, what time frame, because the other conversation I came to was wastewater department employees, which I don't see as having that need for several years out. I mean, I think the top priority is to get someone in as the assistant to Dan to work with Chatham.
And that's different than an employee?
No,
Just
this would be-
language-wise?
This would be an employee, this would be an assistant
Okay.
wastewater,
No.
like Steve is the assistant water superintendent. In my mind, we have an assistant wastewater superintendent. Both assistants answer to Dan. And then
Yes.
Dan is the umbrella, and he delegates and assigns the work that needs to be done. They get back and they report to Dan. But as far as employees out there running the system, honestly, I don't see that happening for several years.
But, no, my question is, just for clarification, if we were to support hiring a full-time assistant wastewater to work under Dan, wastewater person, what would that timeline look like? What would have to happen? Can it not happen before next May's meeting? Or can it,
Yeah,
could you
so,
theoretically put out a job description and advertise in 3 weeks, let's say?
so I don't want to get too far into the.
Just for public
Yeah, no, well,
understanding.
that process is kind of being debated right now between the Charter Review Committee and the Selectmen.
So
as
there
far-
isn't a process?
No, there is a process, but I think it was a process that was followed from the 90s until mid-2010s, and then has kind of stopped, and now they're trying to restore it with regard to the town meeting approval of the creation of a new position. So that discussion is kind of ongoing right now. I would say, based on the climate of where everything is and has been, the earliest it could be accomplished would be at a spring town meeting, would be to create and fund the position. Now, I did, or, you know, Sandy predominantly help put all the budget stuff together, but we had included in for the salary and wages line item, you know, because this budget that we're going over later in the agenda is for FY24, a year from now. And that's, we'll be going for construction, you know, for phase 3. We did include money in there for it. I put it in for the hybrid position as, you know, if we can get this accomplished, get the position created in the spring, then that could start that transition effective July 1 next year.
And that is something that would go before town meeting in May,
Yeah.
not before the fall town meeting?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
Noreen?
Can I just add that irregardless of what process is used between the one that's being debated now, if nothing changes, if everything changes, it could still not be earlier than May, because you can't appropriate money till next May anyway. So May would be the earliest, no matter what.
No matter
things.
what.
And
Even if there's money in the budget.
And, yeah, and to identify what line it's coming out of anyway. So that's the earliest.
So then I would recommend, or I don't even know how we would do this, but it seems to me that it would make sense for it to be identified in all the work, that the prep work you're doing as a full-time position, not shared with the water side. And you could fix it later on if need be, but process-wise, to start out of the gate as a full-time assistant on wastewater.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, it's a work in progress. I mean, that's what we're
Yeah,
working
right.
toward.
But I thought you meant that temporary hybrid was going to be the existing open water operations job.
I potentially, I
Yeah.
mean, and that, so if we did it, if it went that way, we wouldn't be, I guess it's up for interpretation, but we wouldn't be creating a new position. We could be amending, you know, an existing position to make it a hybrid one. That wouldn't result in any necessary, you know, budgetary impacts, because it would just be expanding a role. And then, so that's what I had included in for FY24. Because I don't know, you know, when we're in the meeting with the town administrator and Mike, you know, we're gonna have to go, if we wanna get a new position created, and rightfully so, it needs to be justified, and I don't know what the willingness is gonna be if I can't say with 100% confidence that I have 40 hours for a dedicated wastewater person. And I don't necessarily wanna ask for it unless it's something that's, you know, completely justifiable. Now, some things that could impact that, the town's been talking about hiring, you know, a town engineer. So if they hire a town engineer, you know, before Griff left, he was kind of spearheading the Coldbrook project. He was, you know, processing invoices, you know, for the public outreach coordinator, working with the developers who've been building along 137 to make sure that that project coordination took place. So if they fill that position, you know, that's gonna help me at, you know, the upper level with implementing the CWMP, but it still doesn't get me anywhere with the O&M of the collection system we have. And, you know, so I think with the staff we have now, you know, we've had 4 or 5 new people in the last couple of years, that we could split one of those and continue to get everything done. You know, people would have to step up, of course, but I think that in the interest of the long-term goal, that's a short-term sacrifice.
So we have one water position open.
Correct.
And that position you'd like to fill with a hybrid person to
Potentially.
split between water and wastewater.
Oh, that's open now.
We have one wastewater
Oh,
department
okay.
employee position open right now.
That would be great, because,
But that person would have to have the background or knowledge or understanding
Right.
of it becoming potentially a wastewater position.
Right.
we're committed to doing the courses and taking the
Right.
state exams.
Right.
I mean, I don't, that would work too. All right.
I thought you weren't going to start this process until next July. That's where I was a little confused.
Well, I mean, yeah, and
But if there's an
that
opportunity.
portion may not, happen until July, right? You know, and there's union side of the discussion
Right.
too, and, you know,
But that-
changing duties and stuff like that.
And that position would have to be, the salary would have to be split between water and wastewater.
Which we are doing, you know, with mine and admin here as well. We're actually proposing to increase some of those percentages because there's a lot more time spent on it.
Feels like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack with that one person's gonna fit in. But, I mean, yeah. I mean, if we can do that, and that's acceptable for us and that employee, and that'll push the step in the right direction, I mean, that's a benefit to us, I think.
Right.
In my opinion, so, all right. Any other thoughts on it?
No.
All right.
Yeah.
How about equipment, Dan? That's nothing in the foreseeable future? Didn't you mention something about,
Oh, so, and I guess I don't know if I mentioned it, the last one on equipment, thanks for bringing that up. We have a skid steer in our garage presently that DPW has traded with us for one of we had acquired a diesel lawnmower from, I think it was the tech school before it was torn down. So they gave us a one-for-one swap for the skid steer. So I know Steve was looking to get one of our radios put in that machine and the set of forks for it. So I know that was something I don't think I included.
is that a done deal? Have we swapped that?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was something for wastewater that we swapped it out.
Turbine generator?
Even that generator? No, I don't think that's what it was. No?
No, you just said we needed a new truck for.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
and that yeah.
I thought it was something about wastewater. I can't remember what it was now. Okay. All right, anything else?
But to Noreen's point, I guess that second vehicle that DPW was, you know, that second Explorer, the
Yeah.
recycled one, could serve that, you know,
And how does that work? Is that as a swap?
yeah, they just assign it,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, if that works.
So maybe you better get one on the capital plan anyway for when that one dies, since it's a old borrow.
Right.
All right. Anything else with that? All right. Effluent recharge investigation.
So the selectmen endorsed the effluent recharge contract this past Monday. This is the first time we've kind of blurred the lines of the charter with the wastewater commissioners and board of selectmen, and that the effluent recharge contract was funded from the wastewater operating budget this past year for effluent recharge, but where that is a wastewater contract related to CWMP, the charter says that the selectmen retain implementation of CWMP and construction. So legal thought that it was appropriate to have the selectmen also endorse the effluent recharge contract.
Who's paying for it?
We are.
You know,
When you say we, you mean wastewater?
Yeah, wastewater.
Wastewater.
but anything that comes out of the CWMP, approved by the Board of Selectmen, is supposed to be paid by the broad base of taxpayers. You know, like Phase 3 will
Yeah.
be through borrowing and everything else. So what's different about Phase 3 as opposed to an effluent recharge area? To me, the wastewater expense money, the wastewater department, is only your chemicals, your IMA agreement, because otherwise, the revenue from the users will never cover.
Right. And this one contract, I would say, is likely a one-time. If you recall, this was from our FY22 operating budget, where we had budgeted professional services
Right.
for the pump station O&M.
I know.
And because that,
Yeah.
you know, we had the available money there.
Right.
This board, I think it was May, we approved that so that we could get going on effluent recharge.
Right. But I didn't like it then, and I still don't like it.
Still don't like it. But that was,
Right.
yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't do it again, you know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's,
Yeah, I've got a question for
Yep.
the chair. Does this conversation have anything to do with our conversation, I think like 2 years ago, on whether or not we as a board need to have a separate attorney firm look at what we can and cannot do?
We can't have our own legal,
We can't.
nope.
But this was all just,
I
this
just
was
asked
all
them, just-
legally.
Yeah, only the board of selectmen, the select board.
But is,
I mean, we can ask opinions
right.
from legal, but we can't have a separate firm representing just us, the department. Like, the firm that represents the town represents all of us.
All of us.
So, yeah, we can ask an opinion.
Sorry. So, and you know, I guess just to go back a little further, this was also part of the is the contract that we are also providing ground support on as a department. The commissioners approved use of our equipment and staff to install the infiltration ring to do the hydraulic load test, and so
Right, yeah.
that was all.
I mean, that part's fine, but is this the contract that just went through at the August 22nd Board of
Yes.
Selectmen meeting? You know, that wasn't made clear in that. It was just, here's a contract, let's sign it, you know? I mean, I read that packet, and I didn't realize that was coming out. Maybe it was in that giant pile of papers that comes with every contract, but, I mean, it's fine. You know, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I didn't-
60 grand, you
yeah.
know? But it's just, you know, to keep those lines as they were. Anything that isn't specifically used by our users, our customers, I feel, should be paid for across the board of the town. I mean, that was the funding that was voted by the Board of Selectmen of how they wanted to fund it, you know? And if they can't afford it, you know.
Bottom line is, no one doesn't like it.
Well, no, I don't like it, because what's gonna happen now is next year, people are gonna say, well, how come we're not making more money on wastewater? You know, we'll be 60 short, and we'll be looking for a, you know, $700,000 transfer into wastewater, which should have been $640,000, and people will say, you know, I mean, it's messy. And if it's gonna happen again, please warn me in advance so I can speak my piece when they sign the contract. Thanks.
All right, Dan, what else you have for?
Yeah, well, just to get, about the effluent recharge
Yeah.
investigation.
Yeah, okay, that's better.
We were out the prior week with GHD to go out and do site walks at the 3 sites next to the DPW, across the highway behind Azalea Headwaters, and then also up in North Harwich near the power line easement. So we walked the 3 sites to look for access. Right now, the most promising site is immediately adjacent to the highway. So if you come in off Azalea, there's a walking trail that goes all the way out to the fence line. There's 2 town-owned parcels along the fence line that are looking like they'd be a great location for an effluent recharge site. The hope is that we can petition Mass DOT to get access from Route 6, so we don't have to come in and cut a trail through the woods, so that we could minimize disturbance to the adjoining neighborhood and still get access. So right now, that's the most advantageous site, given the site walk and investigation so far.
And I'm just,
Try to give Judith a shot.
Get
I was just gonna ask, is that a new site, or was that one of the ones that they originally identified?
That one was
The
one that was
old team?
original, yeah.
It's literally right off of Suicide Alley. It's like right there.
Yeah, right there.
Right across from the dump, basically. Sorry.
So you're talking about behind my house?
Yes.
Which is a perfect spot for it, really.
It is, yeah.
That's all right.
Perfect spot for it.
That's all right. I believe in effluent recharge areas, and they're not like the old days. I don't have a major problem with that, but that was gonna be my question. That was one of the original
Yes.
ones, designed there. Yeah.
Yeah, we also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you know, we know what confusion can come from announcing an effluent recharge area to be constructed. Would it be, I can't forget, GHD to do neighborhood education, or how close is it really to the end of Azalea?
It's not at all.
It's really not, it's way closer to.
It's
I
on the
walked
highway.
it. I walked with them, it's literally right off the highway. You gotta walk
I
pretty
can't
deep.
tell you how far is the highway to the end of Azalea then?
Somebody's getting mad at me, I mean.
No, I'm not getting mad.
It was quite a walk. I
From
mean, I
Google
don't know.
Maps, it
Yeah.
looks like the street Azalea
Yeah, the tip
is
of
as
Azalea.
long
I know, I know.
as the end of Azalea to the highway.
Yeah, how long is it?
It's pretty long. It's like the size of that whole
Yeah, that
neighborhood.
house at the end of Azalea. how
That's your
close-
house.
No, it's not.
That's
Of
right
course.
there. I mean, again, we walked.
I
for a
would say it would
while.
be a measurement, maybe I don't wanna say a mile, 'cause it wasn't a mile, but I
okay.
mean, it's,
That's all I wanted
it's,
to know.
it's like, it's
Yeah, all right.
as far away from, honestly, it's as far away from the end of Azalea as you could get without being in the highway.
All right, so here's the solar field right here,
Right,
and this is, it's literally right here. I mean, it's
okay.
literally
All right.
right here.
Hey, if you're talking a mile, then that, you answered my
I
question.
wouldn't say, I don't,
No,
I'm
not
not
a
saying a
mile.
mile.
I'm gonna try to
I'm
get.
not putting anything like that. I'm just saying it's a good distance.
It might be a good distance to you, it might not be a good distance to the guy at the end of Azalea,
Well,
you know?
it's
And-
gotta go somewhere. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
we are truly trying to find the
I
best
know.
position
Yeah.
away from as much residential, so we don't have to go through Azalea.
So, how familiar are you with the solar field over at the DPW? If you drove in the DPW entrance, it would be about the same distance from the DPW entrance to the back of the solar field.
Okay. So it's,
So that is your house.
Yeah, if you look in the solar field there,
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
this swath directly across the street
Yeah.
from it.
that's all right. I mean, you know, these things can just get out of control. I just don't want a situation where we lose a recharge area like we did in Hawks's, you know, because it
Well,
was,
there will be maps, and there will be plenty of,
because it was poorly, you know.
right, yeah, we
so-
have no intention.
I mean, I think it's great, but,
It's honestly, this
We
is
have maps.
the best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because one of the packages we had has maps on it.
yeah. This is actually the only recharge site that gave me a smile. I only say that
Well,
because,
that's a lie.
you know, when I go
Yeah.
through them, it's, you know, either owners unknown, which is a headache, or it's abutters, not, you know, that
yeah.
you're putting something in their backyard, clear cutting a lot for an effluent recharge, you know, those are all very
You can
big
say one
uphill
of your
battles.
commissioners lives around the
Yeah.
corner, so there you
Well,
go.
even the one over by the power lines, that's a lot of owners unknown.
Right.
And then the one off of Derby was,
That's one that John Howard told me about. I think he might own that, I'm not sure.
by the Seahawks.
Power lines, yeah.
All right.
And is that all state land there, pretty much?
Where? On our side of Azalea? Or,
Or, well, on the Azalea side of the
That's
highway?
town.
that's town owned.
That's town of Harwich?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much
Mostly
room,
town?
what do we need that in there? How many
It's all
acres?
town.
I believe that was around 7.
But what do we need for recharge?
That's what we're gonna determine through this contract, exactly how big.
Okay.
So the final step is installing that infiltration ring and getting the hydraulic capacity. That's what we're gonna need to use to get the square foot of
And the
sand.
Hudson River is to the left of that property, so, I mean, there's plenty of tests that need to be done
Yeah.
to see if it's gonna affect the Herring River. I mean, this is just the beginning stages, but
So,
That's, I'm coming all the way back from Chatham.
Or if we are fortunate to
Dennis.
partner with Dennis, yeah.
yeah, and that was gonna be my next question. So this area wouldn't be used till beyond Phase 3? Is this part of an attempt to hook up with Dennis?
That, yeah. I mean, well, we have to find an effluent recharge site as part of the intermunicipal
Right.
agreement with Chatham, but also,
Okay.
you know, if not a partnership with the town of Dennis, and, you know, Harwich builds their own plant, we'd have to cite one for our own plant or a joint recharge.
Right. But more than likely, we would not be using this for Phase 3?
No.
Because we don't
No.
run all those
Yeah.
pipes, yeah.
This is,
Okay.
from my perspective, this is for the remainder of Harwich, outside of East Harwich. So the Dennis Regional Plant or a Harwich plant that
Gotcha.
serves the other watersheds.
Okay.
All set?
I believe so, yeah.
86 Old Chatham Road, update pay plan. Leslie?
Yes, the board had requested an update on this particular property. It was back in July, you had made an accommodation for a plan. And I just wanted to let you know that although the plan was not followed, the bill, or the account is now paid in full.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's different from the one we were talking about a couple weeks ago. That was Chatham Road or Old Chatham Road? That was a different one, right?
Thanks, the Old Chatham Road.
I'm sorry.
You had set a special consideration for a second property.
Right.
And we don't have an update on that one.
Okay, all right, so 89's off the
Now
books.
paid in full.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, water budget.
Pass it down.
I do need one more. Here you go. Thank you.
So when you walked in, we were still feverishly working on
I saw that.
going through. It's been a busy week, to say the least. My day yesterday kind of got stolen by the sewer project, so we're behind
There
the
we go.
Yeah.
Sewer project.
yeah, my life. All right. So, as I did mention when we were talking about the wastewater staffing discussion, if you jump in, let's see, to the fourth page after the indirects worksheet, is breakdown of the salary and wages. That did include, what we did budget for was regrades of the HEA positions based on the conversations, about acknowledging wastewater duties, so we proposed budgeting money for regrades for those. Also for the bottom line, you'll see wastewater foreman.
Right.
So that 50% of that budget right now we're carrying within the water enterprise, because if it was a hybrid position, we'd be splitting it. So we did carry that in this projection. Let's see.
So these are the job descriptions as they stand today.
New, yes, and negotiated FY23, and that new contract, new job descriptions. The only one that's not a new, not actually a position yet is the bottom line with the wastewater foreman.
Okay, vacant, yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So,
Noreen?
thank you, Karen. So this is projected for 2024, which won't begin till next July. I'm wondering if 10% for the office staff and things like that is low.
That's, well, for how much of their salary should be paid by where, yeah, and that's, we were talking about before, it was originally 5%,
Right.
and that was based on, account percentages and kinda, okay, there'll be a few more invoices to process under wastewater. It doesn't, I think to your point, recognize the mailings, everything else that's come with this.
There's another thing that I don't see that it recognizes, is that, eventually you probably may need some additional staff or other types of adjustments, but if we don't show, like let's say you showed that it takes 25% of their time, then anybody who was digging into this, the average person wouldn't, but then they would say, oh, well, that does really show that there's a significant burden on performing the duties of the water department, because now you only have 3/4 of a Sandy and 3/4 of a Tracy. Whereas if you know, 10% is so puny, it'd be
Right.
like, well, she can do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I'm just thinking we should maybe think in terms of that direction.
Yeah.
And since, and I was just gonna be catty and say, since we're willing to pay for, you know, recharge areas out of wastewater money, we certainly can pay for the salaries for the people doing the work.
Yeah.
You know, but,
But
I
what
don't-
were you saying, that for them to keep track of their hours, how many hours they're putting into?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, this is like, for instance, we took on Sega, we're only giving credit to wastewater for 10%
Right.
of her salary, so I'm suggesting that for FY '24, that we think about a figure more like 25% to show what she's actually doing, and to show that it's putting a burden on her water time and water duties. So
I agree.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that maybe not 25, maybe 20% is the magic number, or at least, but I'm thinking.
But how do you validate that 20%? I mean, we're just pulling a number off.
Right, we are, but they know what they do.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be the one to suggest the number.
Right,
but,
right.
I don't disagree at all.
Okay.
I'm not
No, and that's what we were talking about, is,
I
you know,
am,
what
I'm
is
not.
that percentage? We
Right.
said we definitely should increase it, because it doesn't reflect actuals.
Right,
We just haven't had too much
Yeah.
time
okay.
to dig
I'm sure
further
we're
into
seeing
it.
many
Yeah.
drafts.
At some point, sounds like you'll need more staff, too.
At some point,
Yeah,
yeah. But, yeah, definitely,
Right.
like 20%.
I would
See
say.
what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
But then we get to the whole thing is, okay, we have more office staff doing the work of maybe what, Wellesley and Tracy, or Wellesley Sandy, or Sandy Wellesley, and now you're looking at maybe, where are we putting these people? Like, where's the office gonna be?
Well, if we build that new building.
No. But, you know, the additional office staff was always talked about for
And I
10
agree.
plus
I mean,
years.
Yeah, but I was saying,
you know.
where are they
Yeah.
gonna go? I mean, at some point, we have to put them somewhere, like, we have to think about that.
Yeah.
Did you want to say?
We have room for one more, where our IT operation is, because our IT works remotely for the most part, so we do have one seat available and a desk for one more person, full-time.
And does this room get used a lot, or just for our meetings?
Safety meetings,
Is it-
mostly safety meetings, staff meetings. We all meet in here when we sit down to brainstorm.
Could we put Steve and Jay out in that garage there upstairs?
Yeah.
I mean, we have, something, I don't know.
Go off the ceiling.
All right, go on, Dan.
So that's the salaries and wages component that's been put together so far. Jumping into expenses, there is beyond, almost to the end of the packet, a detailed expense, including FY '22 actuals.
For water or wastewater?
Water.
Yep.
FY '23 budget, FY '24 requests, and then increase or decreases. So we have, I don't know if you want to go line by line, or just touch on the big ones. Fringe benefits, that's the clothing allowance, boot allowance for field staff, so that increased based on the new contract. The electric utility, still thinking actually may need to raise this up a little bit more. I just need to try to get some more information on what the projected electrical rates.
Wait, where'd you get that from?
So this was based on current year-to-date past fiscal year's actuals. So this doesn't yet include an inflationary component to it.
That seems low to me.
Yeah.
My
So,
electric went up 103%, does that mean?
yours did?
Yeah. Just for August.
So that's one thing that is on my list to dig into. Going down, we have decreases in vehicle and equipment maintenance based on prior year actuals, building and grounds maintenance. There's a big reduction shown there. That's because last year we had debt fall off for the Route 39 tank, and we had taken the debt savings and put it in the buildings and grounds maintenance with the intention of funding the fiber project that we've been working on out back of T1 here. We ran the conduit out to the 39 tank. So now that that one-time use is no longer there, we'll be looking to move that into restore any other increases that or offset increases. So that's the big 60% reduction there. Professional services increased pretty decently, but to be quite honest, as my time fills up, there's less I have an opportunity to do, so I'm relying upon help a little bit more often here.
So what will that be an example of professional services?
So, if I need GIS support for mapping updates, Guy Todd that works at GIS, or GHD, supports me there. So that's kind of technical support agreements. What else do we have?
IT.
IT.
SCADA services.
So that's when you call and
Yeah.
need help with the SCADA.
Yeah.
Certificate for them. All right.
All right. Advertising, increase based on actuals. These are small ones. Postage, the same. The propane utility base decrease based on actuals. Bulk fuel, increase based on actuals. Treatment supplies, that's decreased based, and this is, keep in mind, like I mentioned when we started, this is first draft. We're just getting into it today, so there's likely going to be some changes as we keep going forward with the budget cycle. Chemicals increasing quite considerably. The cost for potassium hydroxide, which is the chemical we use to adjust pH, went up 19 cents per unit, so that was a pretty big jump. And we've been pumping a lot. I mean, barring restrictions, historically, then this is our big time. Moving down, we have increases based on the service installation supplies as well as pipe valves and fittings. We're being told from our equipment suppliers, some of these prices are going up 20%, as well as just frankly needing more materials because we're doing more. We have decreases in our police details and road repairs just based on actuals, and increases for our tank inspections and generator maintenance also based on actuals. And then the last decrease is for uniforms and safety supplies. We had bumped that up the prior year due to COVID, purchasing whatever PPE we would need for there, so we're reducing that back down. Assuming COVID stays gone.
Then where are our indirects?
Indirects are, if you jump to, there's a breakdown, a detail page. But if you go to this, we don't have updated figures for indirects yet. So we're still level funding based on last year's indirect expenses. So those haven't changed, but there is a breakdown immediately following the budget for the indirect
It's like the
expenses.
third page, fourth page.
That, it's the fourth page.
I got it, thank you. I see it.
I did increase that estimate by 4% based on how it increased from the previous year, while we await the actual numbers from the finance director.
Well, it's better than years past, so, thank you.
Also, we did have, under this agenda item, I did print up copies of the capital plan that we submitted last year. We wanna, that's it, pass both, sorry.
Noreen?
On this first packet that you've given out,
How many are there?
I don't know,
There's two, there are
two separate things?
two separate things, yeah. There's
Oh.
a 3-pager and a 10-pager, so.
I'm not sure what's going on.
This one's really thick, and that one's really thick.
Yeah, one's water, one's wastewater.
There's another thick
Oh,
one.
wastewater, water, okay? Okay. Need one more set over here, I think.
There's a set.
Here's a set. Couldn't have made that more confusing, sorry.
Anybody else need a set?
I knew.
I think
He does.
John,
Oh, sorry, John.
Dan, can we just go back to these once again,
Yeah.
real quick?
Yeah.
Retiree health insurance.
Yeah,
Why did that one go up so much?
we had 4
Oh, right,
retirees.
4, okay, I forgot about that, yeah. Right, okay. All right,
Well, I was gonna move to a different section, so if you want.
I'm done, I forgot, I have to go ahead, that many retirees.
So, on the back pages of the very first packet you gave out, under revenue, and I imagine this would be for future discussions, but, because I couldn't possibly, I'm trying to take into account, which I'm sure you are, the impact of the water restrictions in Dan, and the fact that it may carry into next year and projected, please rain, but, God forbid for FY #24 also. So I wouldn't expect a, whole discussion on that now, but I hope we do at some point of going through the drafts. Because,
We're pumping more water though this year, right?
We were,
About
up
20
until,
million
yeah, up
more.
until. So, it is my plan, I have a second to breathe, to go in. I built a pretty decent revenue projection Excel sheet, so I'm gonna try to go in, and I have it built from our daily pumping volumes, so I'm gonna try and take daily pumping volumes and plug it in since restriction to see what impacts that will have. Where we do budget on the conservative side for revenue, I don't anticipate, but I do want to get that information put together soon so that if we need to do something at Springtown meeting, we're way out ahead of it.
just a question. So we actually get revenue from the water service type plan?
Comes in as a revenue line item. From the fee that people pay on the annual fee, that's how it comes in as revenue.
We also should put on to revisit our capital plan, because this drought is definitely gonna affect how we proceed with that.
Yeah, and not to
Where's
get too far,
where's the infrastructure money?
not to get too far astray, but also the capital plan and water rates, I only say that, hopefully and optimistic we'll be able to get some infrastructure bill money. They still don't know where it's going yet.
They haven't dispersed that yet.
But given the inflation that we've seen since the start of the pandemic, getting preliminary cost estimates for, phase 3, the water main and the Route 28 dry pipe, and they're considerably higher than we had expected.
The Route 28 water main replacement, how much?
So the caveat that I would start with is there is currently in the estimate over $2 million worth of flowable fill, which DOT typically requires when you backfill to put flowable fill in. We are going to be seeking a waiver for that because they're going to be restoring 28 right after we go through. But right now, with the 2 million, we're I think around 13 million. Yeah,
That's almost double what we projected.
right.
Any chance that'll go down?
Hopefully by the 2 million if we get the waiver, and then we will be eligible for disadvantaged communities program so long as they don't change our rating this year, which could give us 3.3 or 6.6%. And then there's still the unknown with the infrastructure bill, because they haven't clearly laid out how that's all getting allocated yet.
And is it just because materials and labor is
Yes.
increased?
I have a side-by-side comparison from Chatham's sewer construction that they put out to bid in 2019, and then one that they just put out a couple months ago, and a lot of the percent increases for, cost per linear foot of pipe installed between 8 and 12 feet went up over 180%. Some of them are 200%. I think the average percent increase was around 200% on those items. So it's gone up quite a bit. And then we're getting hammered on the supply chain side. The vendors are telling us if you order a, stick of pipe, you're not just paying an increased inflated price for the pipe, you're also paying a several $1,000 charge on top of that just for the iron. It's not great.
Doreen,
I saw that Brewster stalled one project and are considering another.
Yeah.
One was the ladies' library. The original bids were $1 million, but then for some reason they paused for a couple of years. Now they're $1.6 million, so they're just stopping. So, I mean, it's a shame, like I've said to Dan, whatever we get for, if we're lucky enough to get for infrastructure, it's barely gonna offset the inflation. So we're back, to paying for everything ourselves as a town,
Right.
so it's crazy.
And, like for the Phase 3 area right now, I caution saying it just because we're still refining everything, but if we were to sewer everything that was, proposed in the original survey, it's almost at $50 million. So we were originally carrying 30 million and hoping that would go down to 20 after principal forgiveness. Now we may go from, 50 million to 35.
Back to where we were.
What we were hoping to start from, so.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's, you're good.
It's not boring, I just,
So and with this, and I don't have anything to share, unfortunately, for the wastewater.
It's more or less just sort of like a repeat of last year,
Yeah.
other than salary and wages, while we were awaiting Chatham's budget.
And that, as you may recall from last year, we rely pretty heavily on the information in Chatham's wastewater operating budget to inform ours, as we are contingent upon. No, and we are starting the budget cycle earlier. This is historically early too,
It
right?
is
Yeah,
early.
it's historically early too. So we just got it in the nick of time before. I guess it's time to start pinging them now, but you'll see salary and wages increased. That's due to the carrying of the water side salaries at a higher percentage. Other than that, electric we're holding, gas utility we're holding, until we can better understand what Chatham's expenses are gonna be.
those pumps down there in East Harwich, that's propane?
We have, no, they're natural gas.
I thought we had a propane tank down in one of those. Haskell, wasn't we had propane down at school?
Hardin?
Oh, Hardin.
No,
Is that
that's,
propane down there?
yeah, no, all of them are natural gas. On the wastewater side anyway. For the water, we have a number that are propane.
All right, Dan, what you got?
Well, I guess, not to jump too far ahead, but in considering, like, next board meeting, our budgets, in the budget message, wanted them entered into Munis by next Wednesday, there's still gonna be some time after they go in, before they lock it, and we can't make any more adjustments. But if the board would like to meet again before to review any potential changes, would look to do that next week before Wednesday.
I'm not gonna be here, but that doesn't mean you still can't meet in.
Next Wednesday?
They're due into the accounting software next Wednesday.
So we need to meet before then?
I guess, so, jumping back to the spreadsheet here, the itemized expense budget, we have a number of increases and decreases that, like I said, the one that we still need to look at is electric consumption, or electric, what we're gonna budget for electric to determine how much we should carry for inflation there. These are the types of changes that we're gonna need to make before we get it in on Wednesday. If the board does want to go through those before it gets entered in, or we could pick it up at our next meeting. You know, I don't think it's a big issue either way, but.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, it is still draft, and you folks have the expertise, so you're gonna explain to us the reasons. I mean, I can't imagine what us looking at this and coming in, you know, for a meeting would change at this point. I mean, I would say we'd pick it up afterward. I don't see a need to meet before the 31st.
Right.
That's just mine.
So you don't need commissioner's approval for,
Not at this stage, not to enter it into the computer, yeah.
Yeah, I would say to address that accordingly.
No.
We're along for the ride, the much you can do about it.
Right. And I guess for the next meeting, if we are gonna pick it back up at the next meeting, I'll also work to update the capital project request forms with new numbers, because I do want to get out ahead of that with capital outlay and FinCom, because there are some pretty decent increases there.
Noreen?
So, are these copies of the request forms from last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't have a chance to update
That's all right.
them. That was my plan for yesterday, but
Yeah,
yesterday
so
got
these
that.
are, I forget what you call them, FY '23
Yeah.
submittals.
Yep.
And it looks like the big one would be going for May.
Yeah.
All right, so you would have updates of these, so there's, other than to refamiliarize ourselves, is we need to go crazy with them. Thank you.
All set then?
Yeah.
Well, 4, cleaning and redevelopment.
Or did you wanna, I think we skipped C.
Budget reports, water, wastewater?
Yeah.
Just that I provided a summary of how the water enterprise fund, how I've estimated how our reserve fund balance or retained earnings will look based on our revenues. Well, let's go down the budget report for the water department. We finished up with expenditures of 1.24 million, which did leave, and we didn't spend our full, that was salary and wages, I'm sorry. We didn't spend our full salary and wages line item. We also didn't hire seasonals. We had still people that retired and new people that's come on board at lower rates, so that did give us some remaining funds in salary and wages. Operating expenses, as we ended the fiscal year, and as always, we err on the side of caution of any, expenditures at the end of the fiscal year. But we also, we spent just over $2 million. We unspent was $97,000. And for our revenues, we didn't meet our projections, but we were so close. We were off by $129,000 in the scheme of things. We collected over $5,088,000 in revenue. So the revenues less our expenses added to our remaining, our certified free cash from last year, gives the estimated reserve fund balance at 2.288264. $2,288,264 is an estimate. The articles that we had for annual town meeting have been deducted, as you will see. Vehicle replacement, $90,000, and water main design, $300,000. Those are the two articles that came out of our free cash certification. Yeah, so it looks good. There are accounting entries that have to be made when the finance director closes the books. The auditors are here now, so, and I have a call in to her to review a few things. So this is likely to change, and I'll bring it back, but I wanted to see what it looked like and to share that with you. The wastewater enterprise fund is a little bit different of an animal, as you know, because we don't have a lot of revenue coming in yet for user fees. And so there's always the town's contribution. But that being said, the salary and wages line item was overspent by just under $900. The wastewater expenses, what was budgeted, was $440,000. We spent $121,000, and we have encumbered $60,000. So what's remaining is $258,000, which stays and will go to retained earnings. Revenues, $1,582. We're going to look at how many customers we have and better estimate. I don't think it's going to be that much more, but it's going to be more than $1,500.
Well,
so that
$1,000 of that was that revenue replacement grant that Cal and I got. So
well, yeah, right?
That may actually be a little less.
That's true, yeah. So, yeah, the wastewater enterprise fund is not as easy to determine what the free cash certification is going to be.
I'm just going to ask one question, because I'm struggling with this a little, but then I'll contact you too and then tie up the whole thing. But the one question I'll ask today is that, I couldn't understand why the original budget under wastewater was a transfer in, but then in addition to that, items that you would think would be in the budget, like revenue, expenses, and salary and wages, were listed individually. So I said to myself, does that mean that we spent, for instance, with the expenses, $121,000 over the budget that included everything at 515? You know what I'm saying? It's like that's why I'll call you guys.
So the transfer in was from the general fund, and that was the wastewater budget.
Right.
Yeah, so they transferred in the budget for FY '22,
Right.
but at the same time, it feels like there were two transfers, because they started.
The negative 252, or the two.
Yes.
So the 252 was retained earnings balance. And then what, they transferred it in again? No.
I don't know.
These are somewhat of the accounting entries that are made from Munis, and I actually captured it this way for a reason.
Yeah.
Because the year-to-date budget reports that I usually provide, and you have a copy, on the last page of the year-to-date budget report, you can see the fund balance, and it will tell you, what the fund balance is, and then the change to the fund balance, which is the revenues less the expenses generally, and then it will give you an adjusted fund balance. There were some entries made that I have questions about, because the fund balance that shows on the year-to-date budget reports are not accurate.
Right.
So there's entries in there that I'm questioning, and I'm waiting for the finance director to get back in touch with me. the bottom line is, we can confirm all of our expenditures, all of our revenue, the difference, our articles. I have everything ready to show
Good.
her.
So it may be
So
help-
I normally don't put it in this format.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to delay it anymore.
Right,
She's in the
right.
middle of audit, the auditors are here.
I know.
And so I wanted to at least
Yeah.
bring something forward that showed our revenues, less expenses, where it appears that our fund balance will be when the books are closed.
Right.
So, and Noreen, so your question, like on the 121, you're looking at this
Right.
table here, right? So, the 121 was what we spent,
Right,
right? So, your question is that being double accounted, or?
exactly.
And you're seeing it in the, I guess, where are you seeing it the second place, I guess?
Well, the 515
So-
of the entire budget transferred in, I would think, the second line down,
Yeah, mm-hmm.
I mean, wouldn't that have included,
But that's, yeah, so, and I think that's, if you look at the first three items
yeah,
have negative, you know,
right?
so those are all,
Revenues.
revenues.
Yep.
So it's not being double accounted.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's, that
Yeah.
515 is the transfer from the general fund.
Right.
The 252 was what was our free cash from prior year. And then the 1,000, or 1,582
Okay.
was the, so it, accounting math, I guess.
That's as much
Yeah.
as I want to know on that.
The OFIS and indirects, where did that number come from?
For the wastewater operating
Yeah.
budget, last year, working with Carol, I believe that last year was the first year we started carrying. That was based on the percentages of, like, our salaries carried in the wastewater operating budget was then applied to the portion of, like, the health insurance, so that we could you know, carry it where it's supposed to be carried.
It's going to get wilder and wilder.
Sorry for the rawness of that information.
No,
but
no,
like I
that's
said,
all right.
I didn't want too much
No.
time to pass without covering it as we're getting into FY '24's budget.
Yeah, no, Munis
Yeah.
can make those
I
fund
think once we-
balances real high.
Once we start going down the road with the budgets, we should have two separate meetings, one for water budget and another one for wastewater budget.
Yeah, that's a great
It's
idea.
just a lot of
Yeah,
information.
it is
Yeah.
a lot of information, you're right.
For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Me too.
Are we good to move on
Yeah.
to, well?
So just,
It's up and running and everything's good?
I would love to be reporting that. No, so I think I sent it out in an email, I don't know if we've met since it actually went down. Well 4, we have bind up with iron, so that's currently out of service. I have I solicited requests for proposals, I have 3 quotes in. We have a low bid number for $18,092.50
For well 4?
for well 4 to have that cleaned and redeveloped. I'm just waiting on the vendor to get back all the contract documentation, so this will likely be on the board's next meeting with a contract for approval.
That was 59,000?
No,
18.
18,000.
18,000.
How do they do it?
They pull the pump motor, pump column, and then they have to set up a big crane and they surge. They put, is it muriatic acid, I think they put in there, chlorine. They use now a new chemical called New Well, has less phosphorus in it. And they surge it, that breaks up iron, they can flush it out and then restore capacity. I mean, that's our worst well as far as iron goes.
Which one is that?
It's the, if you go down here, it's the first building on the right.
Oh, okay.
So when you put acid and all that stuff and flush it out, where is that going, into the system?
No, no. That
Yeah.
flushes out
The reverse.
through their equipment, and it's, everything's
Oh,
neutralized.
so they suck it out.
Yeah, and then we'll test the well before we put it back online for your, bacteria test and chlorinate and all that, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so this well 4 was 1950,
Yes, but we did,
right there?
we have had to do this every 3 or 4 years
Yeah,
now. Last time we pulled the well, we did turn the impeller down to try to increase the tolerance, but I think that got us another 6 months or a year, but it's back at it again.
Yeah.
Can I just
Yep.
ask, so like the annual, the flushing that we do throughout all of it, does that take away whatever iron buildup might be?
Not at the wellhead.
No, clearly, but
Yeah.
I mean, like,
That's where it's intended, yeah. So
Yeah.
when we flush at what's referred to as scouring velocity, which is the amount of water we need to kind of scrape off. Now, if there's severe tuberculation and buildup, it may not all come off. You might have to do something called like ice pigging, or there's other technologies that you can send something down the pipe to scrape off. But
little robots.
yeah.
How about well 7, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, so well 7 went down, trying to think of the day. It was right before I went on vacation.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
2 weeks ago. So that is a submersible pump and motor. So in troubleshooting, I talked to my well guy. He gave us a couple things to look at. One, check the power cable going to the motor. If that's tight, the motor could have came off the bottom of the pump column. That wasn't the case. We opened up the top of the wellhead to see if there was corrosion in the pump column. That wasn't the case. So there's the motor will turn on and spin, but we don't really get, no water comes out. So my theory right now is that the shaft connection between the pump and the motor broke. So we're gonna have to pull that whole thing out. What I'm looking at evaluating right now with what we have available in our FY23 operating budget is this is one of the submersibles that was put in 15 or so years ago that as they fail, we've been removing and replacing them back with a vertical turbine. So I just need to make sure that we can do that within our operating budget. We typically carry $45,000 in that line item for well maintenance and rehab, but where we've kind of had 2 go down back to back, we're going to be exceeding that likely, so I got to find another home for the rest of that expense.
Noreen?
You and I talked briefly on the phone about starting to consider some kind of a transfer from emergency funds between the impact, even though our estimates were conservative, between the impact of the lower pumping because of the water ban and now these 2 things. I don't know how you transfer, like a FinCom transfer for an enterprise fund, so maybe we could find out how that works out of retained earnings. I'm suggesting that we think about it now. It's only August, rather than if we get up against it between the lower revenue and these failures. But I would have to have you ask how that's done. I don't know how it's done in enterprise.
If you put an article in for unpaid bills, you tell me.
Right, well, normally, if we were in enterprise, you could just go to the FinCom and get a FinCom transfer for this, no problem. But I didn't know if there was some kind of a transfer that's allowable through our retained earnings during the, for an enterprise fund.
We could do a special within the annual in May,
Yeah,
which would fund current fiscal year to offset those,
Right.
or if not that, if we didn't want to wait that long, I feel like I read it in the charter, maybe, hopefully my memory served me correctly, but I think it was the same petition of the FinCom to authorize that transfer.
And
But
reserve fund transfers also get authorized by the Board of Selectmen, I believe, or maybe it's this board.
Right, yeah, I'll
All right.
get the answer.
no, I don't think the Board of Selectmen play any part in
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, we can incur, actually, it's been a long time since anybody's incurred, but there's an emergency funding, a route that you can do, and to address those issues.
Do you think that's something we should consider now rather than wait till spring? That's what I'm asking you.
You know, I mean, no, I don't think we have to do it right now.
No, I mean,
But once he pulls that well,
right.
we'll know what's wrong and then what direction.
Okay, that's reasonable. Yep.
Yeah.
Dan?
Good.
Superintendent's report.
Can I ask one question?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Where is one,
Over off Depot.
Okay.
I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Thank you. Commissioners report.
No,
Alan?
I'm good.
Judith? Noreen? Keith, Don?
Good.
All right, next meeting.
Good,
Anyway, I could,
I'm sorry.
you guys can hear me?
Sure.
My name's Tom Birch, landscape contractor, irrigation contractor since 1987 at Cape Cod in Harwich. Nothing but great things. Dan and I had a great talk at the very beginning of this whole dilemma about things and thoughts and beliefs and the education of the dynamics of lawn, and both educated each other very well. One thing I had a huge concern of, and I didn't think it helped our infrastructure or the system, was the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All eggs in one basket, everyone wired in the same 3 days. I don't think it was a wise choice by the board. That's my personal opinion. Spread it out if you can, make things work a little bit easier and not well towers drain down, and then Tuesday, well, now we're not using any water. We're using water, but we're not using any irrigation water. I think when you set examples and procedures and policies for next year's and future years, you should consider that. We're working in 4 towns. Dennis is, and I understand we've got a huge dilemma and a huge problem, and we got to be concerned. I'm here today to try to learn, to educate my customers and the general public. I thrive on knowledge. So a couple things I'd like to know. Where could I get the information on this, our aquifer? Not, you drink out of the stream, saw, it's a sales source aquifer, Is there a state agency or a state thing that could say, Tom, these are the hard cold facts, not getting it from Dennis Water, Harwich Water, Wastewater, from the high ups?
Is that for like groundwater data, or are you talking restriction?
No,
information?
the actual what's going on with our sole
Yeah.
source aquifer.
Yeah. So our permit is tied to a USGS monitoring well at the top of Nicholson over in Brewster. So that well has its, if you give me your email, if we haven't, I don't know if we exchanged
Yeah, no,
emails
we
now,
exchanged,
but
but we can-
I can send you the link that
Yeah,
has the
great.
whole groundwater report. You can ping back 20 years, look at all the historical data.
I like to educate myself.
Yeah.
I'm a leader out there in the industry. I've been doing it a long time, and people listen to me. But if I don't have the facts, it's kind of hard to do it. And another thing, I'm out there in the field. I think, the office people are trying to get a hard, cold number on how many irrigation systems. I believe your numbers might be on the low side of low. Just from what I see out there, I've got streets where I have 20 houses on it, and 20 of them have irrigation, so there's 100%. I see it out there. I don't know how you're tracking it or how you're trying to get the info. I've been involved in this since 1987, and I've never seen a questionnaire. Do you have an irrigation system? Do you have a well? Do you have? I've never seen it.
We did a direct mailing
Yeah, we
to all
did.
10,000 properties a couple of years ago, with a return postage paid, hopefully that they would reply, but.
And another thing, when you're trying to, maybe in the process of catching the situation of people budget and stuff, you can just look at a water bill history for that one account. I can look at all the water bills in the town of Harwich and tell you, irrigate, not irrigate, irrigate, not irrigate. I mean, you can just tell by the sheer numbers.
Well, that's what Dan was saying.
You can probably get like a cutoff in your knowledge and say, probability of statistics, everyone above this dollar value per year is irrigated with water, town water, and everyone below, and then there's a little bubble in the middle where maybe, I've been a firm believer, going back to 1979, that we shouldn't be dumping great drinking water, tested, monitored, transported, treated water on our lines. So all my properties have wells, and done that. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And then there's another whole aspect of the lawn industry that everyone's a landscaper, but there's a small percentage of people that take it seriously. There's a lot of cultural practices that you can do to decrease the amount of water used to maintain an effluent lawn. Aeration, overseed, pH. Dan and I talked about a whole bunch of soil tests in critical areas like water recharge areas where a proper pH lawn will work way more efficient. Nitrogen you put on it is all used up. It's held there and available to the plants. I have high acid, doesn't work it. So now you gotta use 3 times as much fertilizer to accomplish the one thing. It's a whole dynamic. So maybe in some of your future thing, maybe education to the world. Like, okay, these are things you can do to maybe reduce your water 10%, 20%. I have probably some of the healthiest lawns on Cape Cod, and I believe my knowledge, and they're using less water. Using no water, they're using more efficiently. And I aerate all my lawns, so the water gets in there, the fertilizer used properly. And, the other things, these guys are hacking lawns to 2 inches. Crazy. All my lawns are 3.5 to 4 inches high. Creates shade for the roots, less water absorption, goes to where it goes. So there's a whole education process too, instead of can't water anymore. So guys, consider putting that in there if you ever want me to share my knowledge with the board ever on any of those topics, I'd be more than happy to.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And it's a great concern. I'd love to get that thing on the actual, because everyone said, oh, it's so long. But if I could say, hey, it's 80 feet deep and we've used up 90 feet of it, then I can explain to people. But if it's, whatever, everyone just says, sole source aqua, same straw, same cup. People go, oh, what's that mean? So if I can give hard cold facts, I'll help your case out there.
Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything.
Thank you. Do you see any shift in, so our generation, when we were kids, we played out on the lawn. You don't see that much these days. I mean, the lawns are very ornamental for the most part because it's more our age group, but we're not out playing on the lawn. Do you see a shift in people moving away from having grass to plants that are lower maintenance?
No. Not one bit. Actually, maybe the other way. And then another topic is we're allowing like giant subdivisions to go in, 40, 50 houses. Now they're all sticking their straws in our town water. I think we need to consider something like what's going on with that. Every one of those in that track is going to have a 10-zone sprinkler system on it. Something for you guys to think about.
I actually have a question as well. I feel badly for the people who, were just in the process of using sod or planting new lawns, even though it was the middle of summer. I mean, I don't know that August 1st would have been a good time to do that, but how do we communicate to people that think twice before you take that action? How do we communicate better to the people who might install those lawns or oversee those lawns or whatever, that if I come to you and I say, I want to, tear up my lawn and reseed the whole lawn, that hopefully you would say to me, don't do that now. That's not a good time because you're not going to be able to water.
100% of I will not do a lawn from spring until Labor Day.
Right.
I will not do it. No, we won't. Yeah, I don't care. I won't do it. You're competing with the stresses of the environment in the summer, the heat, using more water. You create a whole big issue with disease which is called Pythium blight, humid hot. So now you got to use more chemicals, and 9 out of 10 times you have to redo it after Labor Day anyways.
So it's really.
But there's going to be, like I just said about the hacks out there, that people
I
want
saw
to do money. They're not going to be professional.
Yeah, I saw two huge ones go in near my house. So so it relies, but most experienced landscapers would tell them no.
I won't do a lawn. Very, very early in the spring, maybe. But once you get Memorial Day on, I won't do anything until after Labor Day. Just me. A lot of guys that won't do that. Take the money and run.
Well, I'll say it's on my list, and you're gonna be the guy I call when I start to work on the, because it's fertilizer and lawn, it's also on the wastewater side.
Yeah, no,
And-
we talked
Yeah.
about it.
And that's one of our obligations with the Pleasant Bay Alliance watershed permit is fertilizer bylaw, which we can't do, although there's working on it in Orleans, but now,
I mean, and that brings up another thing. I've got a lot of law degrees, but I've never been to law school. You might want to, like, talk to the town attorney about the fines, because if it's based on, oh, Mrs. Sally Sue saw Joni Smith's lawn sprinkler going, judge is gonna rip it right up. It's called hearsay.
yeah, we got meter readings, so at least
So
we
you gotta
got,
back it up with facts when you actually say, okay, you reported, this is it, one of our water people saw it, and this is what the water thing, or we analyzed your usage. But you gotta have facts, can't just be like, it's ugly out there. People that hate their neighbors are calling in if there's a water puddle in front of their thing.
yeah.
You know, it's, you know, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing out there. In other towns, people sneaking into people's properties and shutting off their water and shutting it off on back. Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. And, you know, I hate my neighbor because he's got a dog, so I'm gonna turn him in because he waters. So, you know, it's just, it's
Yeah, you're
not the
right.
way I felt. And then one other thing, in 1979, I sat on a couch.
You know Alan?
1979, I sat on a couch, and a gentleman, we're partying, we came back after Brax, and he goes, you're never gonna forget me, but you're gonna buy bottled water, and you're gonna buy it in tankers, and water's gonna be a huge issue. Oh, are you crazy? It comes out of that tap over there. Should've listened to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his name's Poland Spring. Well, we appreciate you guys. I know you get a lot of flack in all directions. Anything I can do with Dan to get in the fertilizer thing and the education of, you know, but he talked about maybe even getting, for critical areas, getting a grant for a soil test, which is an integral part of the dynamics of the lawn. You get this report, they tell you, oh, you need more lime, or you need more organic matter. It's one thing on Cape Cod that's a huge problem, is organic matter in a sandy soil. And I've developed a program for my customers where I aerate, overseed, and top dress with organic. It's just unbelievable what it does. It makes the whole thing work better. It's called cation exchange. It's the bonding of the fertilizers and making it available.
All right.
Just want to say thanks for the thanks, but it's the staff that makes it work,
That's right.
you know.
Yeah, it's definitely not it. Yeah, it's definitely not it.
Thank you for your input.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been involved in town and I've been here for a long time, and I love this town and I want to see it work. And I get 25 or 30 customers in Harwich, and they're all asking me every question under the sun, and I don't really know what to tell them.
Yeah. So,
You know,
through
I
it.
mean, is the drought signification of a level 3, is that based on this drinking cup full of water, or is that based on our conditions, so everyone else is using more water, which affects the overall use of water?
It's a whole bunch, in my understanding, the drought task force, when they meet, they, you know, precipitation, fire hazard, as well as groundwater levels, stream flow triggers, things like that, so there's a whole kind of,
Goes into
yeah.
that calculation of that?
yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it's like, yeah, we know we have a drought, but if we have a big, huge pot of water, and we just don't have the infrastructure, the capabilities to keep up with our growing population, and that's one issue.
Right, it's a different issue.
You know, it's a huge issue, you know, and I try to tell people, like, look, we gotta have X reserve for fire, X reserve if a pipe bursts, we can't just like, oh, plug it up, you know, we're gonna lose all that water, we gotta have reserve to pump over from another. I try to educate people. Not really easy nowadays.
A lot of people don't want to listen. Sue, did you have a comment?
I was going to ask about Dan Mills, East Harwich, 7 Lily Way. About the accounts, irrigation accounts that you spoke of, how many of those are town accounts?
We have,
And the other thing is, I know at the 39 Queen Anne Circle.
they just turned that off, they
Did you
forgot.
turn it off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Reading my mind, because I went by there yesterday, that's green grass right there.
Yeah,
That's some
Yeah,
green
I
grass.
heard about that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it's, or at least they're notified of it now at this point,
My
but
comment, that I really don't need to know the number, but that they're all been informed, like this circle, that they, and observed that they've been shut off.
They have-
I add to the grass situation with this gentleman about that, if you train your grass early in the spring, the roots will go down. You don't want to water every day. You need to train those roots to go down into the grass, down into the lawn. and
Water
then-
deep,
and
fall
then-
high.
And then watch for the stress on the grass. Then, I water mine when it's stressed, and I've got nice green grass. I mean, not so green right now, but I don't have the problem of having very next door neighbor. Another thing, I don't believe that people should be watering in the morning like they do, because people get up in the shower, they're having breakfast, and the irrigation's on, and it's hard on the infrastructure that people even can keep up. In Yarmouth, when I was water superintendent there, it was one of the biggest problems. Because in the morning, we get 22 million instantaneous rate of taking all of our pump water and all of our tank water. If we could get gentlemen, like this gentleman here, to change that time frame, because you allowed that, you set up where there's a time frame that they can irrigate in the morning, and it's the same time as people are getting up. People are using a lot of water. Now, that'll lower the pressure, and your lawn irrigation isn't going to work as well. But it also causes a lot of disruption in the water mains, disturbances, picking up sediment and whatnot. So I don't know how you change that, because it's kind of an industry standard with irrigation people, that they set all their clocks up to either run early in the morning, late at night. I do mine at 8 o'clock. I go around the house 4 times, 10 minutes on each zone, when I'm using it, let it soak in, and watch it for stress. I shut it off, and I won't do it for a week and a half, until I see that grass start to turn gray, which is a nice green. Like the gentleman said, keep it 3 or 4 inches tall.
Well, good to know. That's great. Yeah, thank you for that.
Again, I talked about the time frame, and he actually came to you guys after our call and revisited the starting at 4 versus starting at midnight. Made that change based on the conversation. A little bit about lawns. You can water a lawn at midnight, and then the sun comes up and it dries, and it does create a problem. You water a lawn at 5 o'clock at night, it creates all kinds of other issues. It puts all kinds of, it's called put it to get bed wet. And that just sits on the plant, mildews, creates all kinds of problems with the turf. So then, we have to use more chemicals, more fungicides, more things we don't want to be using. So, any policies you guys said, I'd say encourage to water before the people get up, midnight to 6, midnight to 7, and then shut it down. So, you can water at night, but it does create more problems out there on healthy turf. Water just the average lawn is not gonna.
We need to encourage people to go around, instead of put 30 minutes on the lawn and go into the next zone. Like I say, I put 10 minutes on each zone and just step it around, and go around 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, that's another practice that's coming to knowledge, is what you, instead of doing 30 or 40 minutes all at once on one zone, like the gentleman said, go around. So the first, when the people that just do 10 minutes, they don't even get, the water doesn't even get to the plant. It just sits on the top. But he's very smart in that respect, and I've been starting to implement it, where, say you have a zone that's going on 30 minutes, do it 3 times around. So the first one lets it, second one soaks in, and third one goes deep. So that's another education.
Questions down? There's a lot of information for you.
I'm gonna change my controller as soon as I can put it on again, that's absolutely. Yeah,
They can do
absolutely.
3 to
Yeah.
4 to 5.
You'd be surprised the complaints I hear about people's limited irrigation controllers.
Oh, there's no, I tell the people,
Yeah.
we were in the first stage of this, I go, look, I can't pick Monday, Wednesday, Friday on your clock. What do you want me to do? I said, I can't do it, it doesn't do it. I said, so buy a $150 clock and I'll put it in, and we'll be all set. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't need to do it. Here, you set it then. You set it for every
That's
other day,
great.
or
I don't-
7 times a day.
I just turn mine on when I think it needs it.
Yeah, you're in a,
I'm
if I relied on all my customers to do that, they'd be on 7 days a week. You know, it's another thing, is it doesn't do anybody any good to water 5 minutes every morning. It's just worthless. You're better off watering 30 minutes every 3 days than watering 5 minutes every day.
Yeah,
It's 2/3 of it's
yeah.
going up, and it's not going down. So it's a whole education project, and I'd be more than happy to work with Dan and help him
Appreciate
some of
that.
that stuff.
Yeah, thank you for the information.
Thank you guys, and thank all the staff, from the most senior to the newest hire, because I know it's not easy out there. I gotta run, so thank you all.
All right, thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next meeting. Look at 2 weeks out.
We have a joint meeting with the boards.
Oh,
That's on the 6th.
I talked to Al, I'm not gonna be there, yep.
What are you talking
I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation.
The 6th of September.
the
Yeah.
And that's election day, does it matter?
administration sent out a report to the Board of Selectmen.
They've
The
had
annual
boards.
report to the Board of Selectmen, the boards and committees.
about? I didn't see this. Oh, you got it?
I was sent to Gary, I think I was.
It was just for the-
BCC'd
it
on
was just for the chair.
For the chair, it was sent to the
Okay.
chairs of each of the,
All right, so
yeah, no, nothing, doesn't have to be a full board.
Oh, I see,
It was just
yeah.
the chair report.
it's just
yeah.
our annual report on the 6th, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you don't want us there, or?
Oh, no, it's,
can
I
do
mean,
that.
yeah, anyone can do it.
But it's not our meeting.
It's not a meeting, it's
It's just a report.
It's just
I
a
got you.
report.
It's just a,
And just so you know, the next
So,
two Tuesdays,
the
I'm not.
annual, the annual,
Mr. Thompson's gonna step in on the 6th.
yeah.
I'll come with you.
All right, so what are we looking at for, meeting? So the week of the,
And that's
12th
at
to the 16th?
6:30, right?
Where are you? Sorry.
our next meeting?
Yeah.
15th,
15th?
yeah, it's a Tuesday.
It's fine.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
15th?
15th
Well,
of September?
Yep,
I have a conflict there.
okay.
Well, I mean, I have a 1 o'clock appointment, but doesn't seem like all the budget stuff we can guarantee.
It's almost 2.
I know that.
I know, I've got a 2 o'clock.
All right, how about the 14th?
14th is okay by me.
Yeah, at 11,
30?
11:30? Does that fit your schedule, or do you want it later in the day, 1
No,
o'clock?
early's better, 'cause I gotta go to bed. That's fine.
Perfect.
Okay,
So
so
what do you end up being?
Wednesday, the 14th, at 11:30. So Wednesday.
thank
September
you.
14th at 11:30.
Thanks, so I didn't have to cancel the other ones, which I thought I
We do
appreciate
try to
that.
please, Noreen.
Thank you, Gary, you do, all the time.
I don't know. All right, Wednesday the 14th.
At 11:30.
All right, I'll be back by then. Motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
you're on the vacation that week.
I'm on vacation next 2 weeks.
Wow.
What do you mean, wow?
We could be normal.
Be you, Gary.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I wish to adjourn.
Good.
I wish to
You
adjourn.
didn't get a
So moved.
second.
I'm waiting. So moved. Is it, we have a motion to adjourn, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I've been on a vacation in
Oh, my, come on.
24 years since my kids.
Like,